First off, thank you so much for coming on, everybody. Really appreciate your time. I know you're an incredibly busy man. I'm assuming the guys in England have embedded themselves into the English culture. So you must be 48 hours into a 72-hour drinking binge right now, aren't you? Welcome to the English bank holiday.
We're close.
You're close. Okay, good. So you've soaked up for this, have you? We were talking just off air. I'll come to it. But we were talking about your unbelievable breadth of military knowledge. It's just mind blowing. And thanks for the producers for throwing that on me just before we got on here. That you managed to do the Thin Red Line and Saving Private Ryan at the same time. I mean,
yeah,
just mind boggling. So it was Mike Stokey who was doing the Thin Red Line, am I correct? And then did you split up to do Private Ryan? And you're sending each other messages via what? The no internet? They didn't have an internet then.
No, we had jungle drums, essentially a piece of bamboo, and we beat on it.
And I had the Navajo smoke signals.
You did. That's
Terrence Malick and Steven Spielberg, evidently, that we heard through the pipeline, were talking a lot. They were in communication, Eastern or European theater versus, Pacific theater.
Right, and I am going to get onto my questions in a second. Who has the knowledge here? It's just fascinating to me, because all three of you are ex-Marines. You've all done all these tours. But
former.
Pardon me?
Former.
You never.
Five's your ex.
Former. Sorry, I meant to say former. You're still Marines. I'll get it right in a second. But where are you getting the knowledge from? Where are you getting the knowledge to know about the guys in Guadalcanal? Where are you getting the knowledge to know about the guys that landed at Normandy? Where are you getting the knowledge about Easy Company? Do you have historians that work with you, or are you also military historians?
Yeah, I think the latter is what it is, Matt. For the most part, everybody that works with us is kind of forced by what we do to be at least an amateur historian.
Right.
You've got to know where the research is. You've got to know where the material is. You've got to know, in some cases, the people to talk to. And you have to do a detailed deep dive into things like that. In my case, I did it for 2 decades of active service. All my time was spent reading about things and researching things, and in some cases actually visiting the battle sites and so on and so forth, and then taking that and sort of running it through the card shuffler in my mind and coming up with what I thought was an interesting take on this fight, that fight, who fought it, what they were about, and who they were. And to some extent, I then communicate to my guys, and my guys do their own research. I mean, they're interested. They all have military backgrounds, and they go into this stuff knee deep. And then we put all that together, develop a plan on how we're going to recreate it, if you will, for the director or the writer or the storyteller, or whatever we're working for. Yeah. And then we developed the plan and we put it into action, as we did in I guess 50 some films now.
How did I'm leading to something here. How did you three meet?
Well, I'll just I'll put my take on it and then let the guys talk about it. Okay. But I've known Mike for 50 years. He and I were young NCOs together in Vietnam. Wow. And so, I've trusted him with my back forever. And he, I think, trusts me with his. So we have a shorthand, a communication that's very easy. He knows what I'm thinking before I think it half the time.
Right.
And Freddie Joe was one of our originals that I excuse me, I interviewed and then hired when we were doing Starship Troopers with Paul Verhoeven. Yeah, right.
That's great.
So anyway, I'll let the guys give you their take on how it all occurred.
Let's start with Freddie Joe. Hello, Freddie Joe. It's great to see you again, by the way.
Great to see you too. Yeah, I had just got out of the Marines. I'd been out about a year. Couldn't figure out, like every other Marine, couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to drink, but that was about the only thing I knew. And a bunch of my friends were like, hey, they're looking for former military guys to do this audition. And I was like, what? And then, of course, being a Marine, I'm like, I'm the baddest asshole ever walked the face of the earth. And so I went to the first little audition, met this guy, Mr. Bell, I think. I can't remember the casting, Ball or Bell. He stepped in front of me and said, "Oh, are you an outdoorsman or military?" And I basically, you know, can we cuss on this?
100%.
Okay.
It's also
If you want truism, I basically looked at him. You know, I still had my little Marine Corps haircut, and I looked at him and said, "Don't I fucking look like I was in the military?" And that was it. He just walked away, and then I got a call to come back to this hotel. It used to be the Hilton, it's something now. And I was driving semi-truck at the time, so I had my truck parked out in the cold weather outside in April in Casper, Wyoming, and walked in, and I went through the doors, and I was like, what am I doing here? It was like a Ken and Barbie show. Everybody's in there doing push-ups, and the girls were getting their shirts tight, and I had my name on my shirt and cowboy boots and baseball hat, and walked in there, and everybody kept going, and they were in there for 5-6 minutes, and then all of a sudden I'm like one of the last ones. The Farnsworth, and all I remember is when I first seen Captain walk in, Outbreak was on, and I'm like, oh well, at least I get to meet a movie star, no matter what happens after this. And so I do remember him talking, and he had that distinctive Marine kind of talk from the diaphragm, not from the throat talk when he was saying. He said, "You're going to come report to me. I'm going to have you do a couple things," and blah 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 blah. And so I walk in there. I only know one thing: Sergeant Farnsworth, report order. Snap to attention. He was looking down. He looked up. Marine? Yes, sir. What unit? Suicide Charlie, 1st Lieutenant 7th Marines. I fucking hate the 7th Marines. Give me the push-up. So I jumped down and started doing push-up. Once there, all right, recover. Get the fuck out of my office. Oh, shit. And I go out, and all those Ken and Barbies were like, and like 5 minutes later, he walked out and said, "Oh, you all go home. Freddie, Joe, John Barnett, all military guys, stay. Everybody else, get the hell out of here." That was it. That's how I met him, and I just over the years just observed him and watched him, learned from him, and it's just been a wonderful, amazing experience.
Yeah. It's
and Mike Stokey, they counter each other. One thing I love about Mike and Capt Dye is they are a perfect counter. Capt Dye just seems like a angry old man all the time, and Mike Stokey is the wise wisdom man all the time, and then they combine, explode, and come up with the most amazing magic you'll ever see. And I was very, very impressed with that from the first day I met him.
Brilliant. Before I bring Mike on to say that, Mike, you painted the same picture of Captain Dye that all the actors that have been on the show have said as well. It's this sort of like incredible respect and love and all the rest of it. But Mike Stokey, everybody was terrified of you. I've got to tell you that right now. And it's the quiet. It's the stone face. It's the eyes. It's just. There's a thing that Nolan Hemmings, who played Sergeant Grant, and I do. Even now, if I see him, if I do this, he bursts out laughing, because we used to do it every time Mike Stokey walked by. I'd go, because we had this thing. He was such a ninja. He was such a ninja. He could come up and just bleed you dry without you even noticing it. So I feel like he's going to do it now. So yes, Mike, how did you meet Dale? Tell us about that. This is great.
Well, I was in Vietnam about 4 months at the time. And I come in, blood in my trousers and my utes, as we called them in the Marine Corps. And it wasn't my blood. It was just having been in the field for a while. And I was dirty. And these some of the guys from our unit come running up to me, said, "You got to meet this guy. You got to meet this guy. I've never heard such stories in my life." And I said, "What guy?" "Well, he just got in here." And I said, "You tell me a guy that just got in here came in with stories?" And he did. Truth is, he had been there before on the initial beachhead run in '65. But I was having no part of it until I got to know him. And he turned out to be just a crack Marine and a handful, as we all know.
Right.
And our relationship developed from there. I mean, he was great in the field. As correspondents, we didn't spend that much time in the field together. We would be out with different units, but there were a few times in Way City and going up to reinforce Quezon.
Right.
Fast forward over the years, we got closer and closer because, as Freddie can tell you, that bond never leaves. And I want to get to that as regards to Band of Brothers a little bit.
Yeah.
Bond is so significant, even more than you know at the time, certainly more than I did. Freddie probably went in knowing this. And Capt Dye, Dale, having spent 22 years, it was just part of his life. I would live a different kind of arena for quite a while, and it was still there, and there's nothing stronger in the world. And he finally wrangled me into the business after I told him no, I was working times, and he promised it would be fun. And I said, do I have to do something here?
Yeah, we've lost your camera. There you go, you're back. Carry on.
I am? Oh, I can't see myself.
Oh, you're back.
I
here.
am back?
Yeah, I'm better.
Oh, yeah, okay. On any case, and so I finally said, yes, I'm going to do this. We were doing Casualties of War. And it was with Sean Penn, pretty edgy character, and Michael J. Fox, and a number of others. And I said, to be with you, I'll check in. I'll sign the dotted line. And I did. And before we went to train them, lo and behold, Dale gets a call, and they want him to star in this TV series, Super Carrier. So all of a sudden, he's doing that, and I get to go out there alone, having no clue what the hell to do. He promised me it would come back to me. And the field stuff did, as Freddie, I'm sure, has experienced. That stuff stays with you. So I was I could catch up quick there. But as far as dealing with cameras, dealing with stars at this level, it was a real learning process. And Dale finally came in as an actor, and we talked. But I was really out there. I won't use Freddie's terminology, but alone and baptized under fire.
Yeah, and his ass was hanging in the wind, which is the best teaching experience in the world.
Yeah.
You keep saying that, Dale.
The next job we did, Dale was there, fortunately, and I think it was Born on the 4th of July. And I saw his magic. And I realized I really was in over my head when I was doing Casualties of War. But I did learn a lot from that. But watching him for the first time, I mean, he had already had his program and his methodology nailed, having several films under his, starting with Platoon, and we won't go into the other films he did because he'll kick me after this.
Right.
But he really forged a methodology in that, and it was just brilliant to watch. And I learned a lot from him, and have helped him ever since.
So I have a question. About it, and that is that maybe it doesn't at all, but does it surprise you? I know you've worked with soldiers, but does it surprise you that you've created this bond in actors? I can literally pick up the phone to anybody who's in Band of Brothers. It doesn't matter what their profile is, how hard they are to get hold of. If I can get through to them and say, "Will you come on and talk about Band?" They're like that. I mean, Michael Cudlett's, he's in the middle of talking to a show producer. He's like, "All right, I need to drop off. I need to speak to Matthew about Band," and he's just there talking. And
I don't want to monopolize the time, but it's one of the things I wanted to get to.
Yeah.
And then we'll get to the more important characters. One of the things that's overlooked is we talk about the Band of Brothers, the real band of the real brothers. But these guys are right up there. And this is something, yes, we've, during our 35, 40 years, 50 for him, years of this industry, we've had an actor here, a couple actors here, but never have we had a group. And I think Freddie will agree with this. An entire group that became of their own Band of Brothers. And short of being under fire, they are as tight as we are. Right. It's an incredible thing that we've never experienced. I certainly haven't. This group, you're absolutely right. They are so tight, and it happened from the get-go. Yeah. I mean, we had cadre like Freddie and some other sergeants down in the trenches with them, and everyone worked on them and at them from the get-go. And with one or two minor exceptions, these guys, as you said, well, yeah, but these guys get together every year, They are so tight. It's just so admirable, and we just have so much respect for him for that.
Excellent. So I just want to back up a second, and then we'll go a little bit further forward. So Dale, as you're a former Marine, so you leave the service, and you're full of piss and vinegar, and you're this this big hero, and you think to yourself, I want to fix shit war films. Where does it come from? Where's the seed of that? And then how did you sell it and create this great legacy? Who did you go to and say, look, your film?
I'll tell you, Tab, the only true answer is that you can do a lot of shit that people tell you can't do if you're ignorant.
Right.
And man, that's exactly what I was about show business and how it works and so on and so forth. Frankly, it was a vague concept in my mind. I mean, I remember sitting in a theater outside of Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, with another friend of ours, Russ Thurman. And he and I had gone to this movie called The Boys in Company C. And I said, oh, hey, here's a Vietnam film. We were both in Vietnam. Let's go see this stuff. And it was the biggest steaming pile of humongous dog shit I have ever seen in my life. And I mean, it upset me. It was so bad, it consciously upset me. And I said to Russ Thurman, I said, I'm going to fix that shit. I'm about to get out of the Marine Corps. I'd been, Vietnam, Beirut. And I said, I'm going to find a way to fix this. I'm going to Hollywood. I'm going to find the bastards who made this pile of crap. And I'm going to square them away and tell them that, I have a better idea. Right. I know I can make a better mousetrap. I can make you much more money and much more popularity and so on and so forth if you do it my way. And I actually had the unmitigated gall to think that somebody in Hollywood would listen to that kind of crap from a knuckle dragger like me.
This is so funny because having been in the system, I'm like, how did you do it? How did people know you? Lunatic.
Well, the apocryphal story is, and some of it, there is some truth in it. I used to haunt movie lots in LA, and I would show up, and I would try to spot the guy with a tie and a briefcase, because somebody had told me that the guys who got the money and make movies have ties and briefcases.
Right.
So I figured, well, shit, I'll just grab the first one of those I can by the stacking swivel and snatch him up and say, listen, asshole, the following attends. Well, I would get arrested and thrown off the lot a lot. But the truth of the matter is I just kept at it because, Freddie, Joe, and Michael tell you, Marines don't give up. Right. And although I admit after a year, I was about to pack it in. I'd talked to Mike a little bit. I'd talked to some other people that had a showbiz background. And they said, look, you're really, you're pissing against the tide here. I mean, showbiz doesn't want to hear from you because you're a military guy. And because you're a military guy, you couldn't conceivably have a creative bone in your body, or you'd be out here making movies instead of dragging your knuckles through the jungle, But I was about to give up, as I said, and I hit a little piece in Army Archer's column in Daily Variety. I had learned during my time in LA to read the trade papers. And I saw this little piece in a column that said a heretofore relatively unknown writer-director by the name of Oliver Stone was about to do a Vietnam movie based on his own experience as a combat infantryman in Vietnam. And I said, Jesus, if anybody will listen to me and understand my approach, it would be a guy like Stone. So the short answer, actually, the important part of a very long answer, is that I managed to get myself in front of Oliver Stone. I can't tell you how I did that because I don't think the statute of limitations has run out yet.
Understood.
But through a series of machinations, I got myself in front of Stone, and I pitched him this idea that Freddie knows about now and Mike knows about now and you do from experience of how I thought we could produce better performances no matter what the story. If it was a military story, if you let us train your guys, let us make them walk a mile in our boots.
Right.
Now Stone probably the only guy in Hollywood that would have bought that argument, but he did. And he gave me 33 guys. At that time, you wouldn't have known who Charlie Sheen was, who Willem Dafoe was, who Tom Berenger was, who Johnny Depp was, who Forrest Whitaker was, but I had them all. And he let me take them for 3 weeks into the jungles of the Philippines. We brought them down out of there after 3 weeks of absolute isolation, living in a hole, relying on each other, just as Freddie and Mike and I did when we were in service. And the result was they really understood their characters. They really understood the story. They understood the relationship of each other, not just the physical nonsense about, can I carry a weapon? Can I wear my uniform? But they understood mentally, psychologically, emotionally, how we relate to each other. And because of that, their performances were brilliant. We brought that little $5 million film home. It won 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director for Oliver. And the upshot of it all was that that method that I had been trying to sell unsuccessfully was now proven, and the phone started ringing off the wall. And that's when I had to bring in Mike, and I started realizing that I could pick up cadre, as we call them. Freddie Joe was one of the early ones of those. But we tried several people, and some people are cut out to do it. Some people understand it. You've got 2 other guys on here now that do understand it, yeah. And some don't. Some don't work out. But that's, what the hell did you ask me in the first place? I don't remember. Oh, okay.
Oh, keep going. We're almost done.
It's absolute genius.
But that's the short of it, Matt.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being on boot camp. I come from a military background, and my father's a colonel. I was always on little camps, but I grew up around soldiers. And there are certain people that are just cut out to lead men, whether they're soldiers or actors. And I think actors crave being told what to do and structure. And that's why they love these boot camps, because nobody gives a shit if we don't get out of bed in the morning. Do you know what I mean? So they love this stuff. And I remember like Freddie Joe just having this magic. It was wonderful in that he could motivate people by torturing them, and they didn't know that they were torturing them. It was brilliant. Which leads me on to a question. Why did you pick on Malarkey so badly?
You've seen him. Actually, a part of it is, and Capt Dye, Mike, both to tell you, the whole point is the reason why Band of Brothers, you guys turned out to be so amazing, is we had the time to show you pain that you've never felt before. And the only person that helped you through it were your brothers.
Right. My point is that you had an innate understanding of who to pick on, in that they wouldn't take it personally. You picked on Malarkey, and he clearly loved it. He was just like, I love the fact that he's picking on me. But it just seemed like the rest of us like, damn, he's torturing Malarkey. And Frank John Hughes as well. You kept going like, you're looking at me here, but you can see the time at the same time and all that stuff. It was hilariously bad. But you picked the right guys. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. You know, that is the instinct that you learn why. I mean, my last 4 years in the Marines, I was an instructor at Marine Combat Training, and I was a troop handler. And when you're running, a couple hundred Marines every month through all this stuff, you just instinctively learn, okay, that's my guy right there. It's like playing sports, that's the one I can score on. It's the same thing, it's like the very first day, David Schwimmer was the guy I knew I was going to let everybody know how loud my voice can get. When he lost his cover between the bus and his rack, how'd that happen? I have no idea. Now it's my chance to get everybody's attention. Even though he wasn't in my platoon, everybody's gonna hear me yell, especially between those nice, big, tall, 3-story brick buildings. And then it just moved on from there. In leadership, you have to learn. You don't have to learn. It's very instinctive. It's very instinctive. Mike has a completely different style than I do. Capt Dye we're a little similar, but we're actually completely different. But all we learn is some people you have to say, your mom loves you. You're going to be okay. You're going to make it. And some you have to stick your boot so far up their ass, you got to go to the hospital, get it out of there. You know what I mean? It's you just learn through the years, and it has to be quick. I can't take 3 weeks to figure out who's my bitch.
Right.
Excuse my way I put it. I can't take 3 weeks. It has to be 3 minutes.
I
Like combat,
think
you get now.
We had Monarchy on, and he told that exact story about you sticking your boot so far up your ass it's coming out of his mouth. I mean, it stuck with him, and it's a great joy in his life. Do you know what I mean? He obviously knew he needed that. Do you know what I mean? And for me, it's I just can't get my head around how you instinctively know that just by looking at Doom thing. Right, that's the guy I've got to do that.
well,
with.
listen, when you spend a good part of your life raising other people's children, you know how to read them like that. And the importance of what Freddie said is that each one has different buttons, and part of the key to our success, and Mike's very good at this, is you have to spot that button. You have to, and it's different on each individual. You have to know what it is, and therefore you modify your approach, and you have to do it on the fly.
Right.
The key is it's an element of what, you know, civilian psychobabble guys would call tough love, but it's really that you have to demonstrate to them how you can be hard as woodpecker lips, and yet you have an understanding of love and relying on each other and what all that means. And if you demonstrate that in what you do, and throw in a little humor, and we're good at that, and you throw in a little humor, I mean, they suck it up like every student has that one teacher in his life, in his academic life, that he just loves. And that guy was able to entertain him. He kept him awake. He made him interested in the subject. We use essentially the same philosophy.
Right. Wow.
One of the main keys, though, is that they know you're there to help them. I mean, these guys could have any of us fired in a heartbeat. I mean, after Dale trained people that were not stars, and then we're thrust into training the Sean Penns and the Tom Cruises, and one after another, these guys are on the top of the market. And you get them in the field. When Dale and I first talked about this in the 80s, we said, yeah, but will these guys do this? Will they do it? And even Dale questioned it at that point. But you get them, once you get them isolated, and you get them on your side, that they realize you're not just barking in their face, that, hey, I can learn something from this guy. I can learn something. And then all the other B actors, I'm not talking about in terms of talent, but in terms of status, the kind of actors that wait for their trailers. That's what they're thinking about. Once they think they see the big boys get in step, that's it. I mean, they're yours.
Are the big boys, do they take to it? Because I bet they do. They love a bit of structure. They love being, you know what I mean? They love a challenge. I'm thinking it's more the middling guys who'd be the pain in the ass, to be honest with you. But you
Well,
talk
that's
Tom Hanks, I'll bet those guys were just like, yeah, I'm loving this.
Yeah, I think that's true. And the guys can tell you their experiences, I think, mirror mine. The better the actor is, and I'm talking really about performer, I'm talking about artist, not just actor. The better he is, the more interested he is in telling the story and portraying his character truthfully, the more he loves it, the more he eats it up.
Yeah.
The more he's concerned about himself and how's my hair and where's my trailer and how many lines do I have in this scene, that guy is a challenge. That guy's tough, and he rarely gets it. Right. One of the things that we learned very quickly is that actors grow up learning to lie. That's part of their skill. They've got to convince people that they're telling the truth when actually they're lying. That's a performance. And some of them are massively great bullshit artists. Our challenge is always to spot the bullshit artists and to know when they're actually getting it and when they're not. And when they're not,
how to motivate them beyond that.
That's right. That's right, Mike. Yeah.
Right. Wow, that's fascinating. So let's talk about the first. I'll just jump onto the Saving Private Ryan. You can talk about that, can't you?
Yes, right.
So you've done these movies throughout the 80s, and then Saving Private Ryan drops. I mean, what is that? That must have been a dream and a nightmare all at once, because it's like you've you've got what you wanted, but it's on an enormous scale, and it's like, fuck, now I'm going to make this work.
Yeah, that was I often say that I got my my General Eisenhower fix on that one. Recreating the landing at Omaha on D-Day, but it was really Spielberg called me personally and said, "Look, we're doing this thing. I know of your work, and I want you to run this." And I was able to do it, but I'm telling you, I had to take the concept that Mike and Freddie and the cadre and I have used on a relatively small basis. What did we have, 40 or 50 in Band of Brothers, to include the special ability guys that were around you guys. And over there, I was dealing with 1,000 men, 14 armored vehicles, and 7 ships at sea. So it was the same principle, and it worked that way, but you had to be able to do it on a huge scale. And that was the development of the cadre. That's where my guys that have kind of learned the way we do it, and have learned to do it independently without me having to be, shaking them by the shoulder all the time, and understand mission type orders. They understand where we need them to go and can march off and do it. That's where the entire concept of building our cadre really came about.
But it's more than that, isn't it, guys? I mean, you're not just a cadre that trains the guys and then goes home. You're military consultants. You're there 24 hours a goddamn day from the start to the finish. It's like the Gestapo. They're on you. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can remember having the buckle at the back of my helmet. I thought I'd wear it loose because I thought it was cool. And I got a whacking for that, like straight away.
Yes, you did. And you deserved it.
And I deserved it. Yeah, exactly.
It wasn't me. I didn't hit him. I didn't put my hands on him.
Somebody hit me.
Mike. It wasn't me, Mike.
But my point is that so you are like immersive military consultants for the whole project.
Yeah.
And how much of you are also involved in then the planning of the battle sequences, for example? Are you with the director? Are you in the pre-production? How much of it you guys involved in that? Because I mean, brilliant that some of these directors are. They don't know their arse from last Thursday when it comes to a battle, do they?
Well, I'll probably have to take a shot at that because I tend to do it more than the rest of the guys do as the CO. But the truth is, the quicker we're involved, the earlier in the project that we're involved, the better it turns out to be. Because if we're not involved early in the concept, in the writing, and so on and so forth, then really our job is stamping out brush fires, correcting stuff that's about to be shot or that's being planned for, being prepped for. And that makes it very difficult. The neat thing is, and then I'll shut up and let the guys expound. The neat thing is, when we're involved early, the shoot goes enormously efficiently because we're not running after mistakes. The mistakes aren't being made because guys like you, as Sergeant Talbert, wouldn't make that kind of mistake, and if he does, it's only once.
Yeah.
And we correct that sort of thing. So it depends on the direct answer is it depends on the director and the writers and so on and so forth. But the more we succeed, and the more our track record builds, the more likely these guys are to get us in as early as possible, and that really is rewarding.
So on from that, I have two questions. Firstly, anybody can take them. What are you most proud of militarily? What most do you think? Yeah, I think we got that right. And also, did you ever belt heads with anybody? Was there any like actor or director or producer where you're just like, dude, if you film it that way, I'm gonna fucking whack you one because it's bullshit. 5 guys do not jump in and start shooting because everybody would be dead.
The direct answer is yes.
Yes. I hoped it would.
And I'm not going to tell you who it was, and I'm not going to tell you how it worked out. I'll let the other guys talk for a little.
It's very true. I don't raise my voice a lot, but when I do, one incident happened on the Pacific, and I won't give you the director, but he really was uninvolved, let's say. It certainly wasn't David Nutter, I can tell you that, who we all know from Band of Brothers and the Pacific, who's just brilliant. And I finally lost it. And I said, this would not happen. And all of a sudden, everything stopped. And within 10 minutes, all the producers were right there, simply because they knew there had to be a reason. So most of the time, we don't go off saying, you've got to do it this way. There's no alternative. And almost always when we say, well, is this authentic? No, but I'll give you something that can match what you want. We understand what effect you want. If you do it this way, you'll get it and it'll be authentic. So,
and that really comes, and Mike's exactly right. And that really comes from respect for us, not only as military people, but as filmmakers, as dramatists.
Right.
They understand that, they understand that we understand the drama involved. We understand the story. And while we try not to say no a lot, what we do say is no, but, and then offer, as Mike said, we offer them an alternative that's accurate and still conveys the same emotional beat that they're looking for.
So when you said no, that wouldn't happen, Mike, did you do that with your hand?
He was doing
no,
that.
Just one finger.
I'm gonna unscrew you, bitch, if it happens that way.
You know, man, a lot of times what worked for me when I first did my first show without Captain Dye's safety blanket. I mean, I always had him. He knows I can call him 24/7 to ask him a question. But I got into a situation where I was with one of the greatest directors in the world, Mr. Tony Scott, and everybody, he's got people, everybody, don't tell him no, don't tell him no, don't tell him no. So just one day, I just finally said, yeah. He goes, that'll work, right? And I said, yeah, if you want everybody to get the fuck up and walk out of the movie theater, that looks like shit. And I just turned and walked away. And he just, from that point on, why does it, and he was just chasing me and then within a few days, I'm like, I don't have to be here for the love scenes. This has got nothing to do with me. He's like, yeah, but I got to make sure that, I'm like, so there's different, I learned through watching Captain Dye, and Mike, you don't necessarily have to and also there's a really good life lesson. Some people, you just don't tell them you're going to knock the hell out because it's not a really good career move.
Right.
So you have to, that's one thing I've learned from Captain Dye, and directors and producers are just like actors. We know who we can get into and we know who we have to be like, oh, your work is so amazing. Look at these pretty colors. And you learn that over the years and it's the same way. You got to finally go into it. And I had the same experience where it used to be show up, okay, fix it. Oh, wow. Okay, let me try to fix it. Now it's, 2, 3, 4 months in advance. I'm getting stuff, and as Capt Dye says, that's just because they trust you. They trust who we are. They trust that we're not going to steer them down the wrong road. And as Mr. Stokey said, we will always, if there is a possibility, give them an alternative. And 99% of the time, that alternative, they go, shit, that was better than what I wanted to do. So once that starts happening, you're first on the list for any kind of writing, any kind of direction, actors. Plus, if you train your actors right, your actors will go down that road before. And I know Captain and Mike, especially Mike's had experience where I just kept quiet and the actors going, hell no, let them, they're the ones that got the big contract going. My character wouldn't do that. I know I was out on patrol one time and why would I be yelling to the front of the platoon, and let them do that argument if you train them properly?
Yeah, I mean, I remember from band, you'd get a piece of direction in action and the first person you look at would be the cadre, like, is that right? Because those are the guys that know, do you know what I mean?
The whole under the shirt, no.
Yeah. Mate, is that right?
Also, actors can make points with directors. It's just accentuating what Freddie said, that you don't want to step in every moment. But once an actor knows something, he'll say that firmly. Mm-hmm. And you've won your argument, if you've trained him right and he grasps how important it is.
Right.
Let me just interject one thing, Matt.
Yeah.
As proud as we are of actors that we have helped and they have gotten it and delivered, especially as a group band of brothers, we have that same feeling toward the cadre we find that really step up because, as the captain said, that's a hit and miss thing too.
Yeah.
We roll the dice on that. And military experience, as Freddie can tell you, alone doesn't cut it. You know, because if they don't understand film and actors and psychology, or if they've sat behind a desk in the military and never had to lead men, they don't get it. They think they think this belt buckle or some medal is all that matters, and that's all they're worth. But in any case, bringing somebody up that really gets it and becomes part of us, and he ends up being the guy in the trenches, where we're as we always were before.
Let me. Sorry, go ahead, Freddie.
Oh, I wasn't saying it was Mike.
Oh,
I wasn't saying
one of the things that always used to tickle me when we were at Longmore doing Band of Brothers.
Yeah.
You'll recall that my office, the commanding officer's office, was right across the courtyard, which was our drill field.
Yeah.
From the barracks, and you, Mike, and I, and would sit back there as CO and XO and watch our cadre work the guys out there, and it was like an absolute course in psychology. I mean, we could look at him and I'd say, "See that one? Now watch what he's going to do." And that's his vulnerability. That's what he's worried about himself. Or I'd look at the other guy and say, he's still acting. He hasn't bought into the program. So we need to pay attention to that one and get with him. And we would develop this shorthand between us, but just by watching you guys. And then we would have the cadre meeting, and Freddie, Joe, and the others would be in there, and I say, "Now listen, X needs the following attention. So we're going to put him on the guard roster, and I want him walking out alone by himself in the cold and in the rain with a bayonet fixed. And that's going to give him the time he needs to think and digest." And we would do things like that. Or if your cadre is a tremendous amount of really smart guys, really smart leaders like ours were, there on Band of Brothers, we could just shorthand it. We could just say, motivation problem here. And Freddie Joe, one of the guys, say, "Got it, Skipper," and boom, they go after that guy. But we developed that by watching each one of you for your individual buttons.
That's
because there were some similarities, but each one of you is different, and we knew that.
It's interesting, Dale, because I did do a lot of rainy guard duty with a bayonet strapped to my M1.
It was you.
It was you
ass
bastard. So guys, you get these actors, whichever boot camp it is, but we'll talk about the band one because obviously I was there. So you get this shower of shit. And it's not like you're training real soldiers where you can just wash people out. It's like, okay, he's rubbish, you're going, you're never making it. You've got this set of people that you have to make work. So in that way, it's very, very different. I know you had these special abilities extras as well.
Well, they're a big part of it, though. They're a huge part of it.
And they helped a lot. So my question is, like, how difficult is the first 4 or 5 days? And at what point does it click? And when it clicks, what does that feel like? I remember you being on parade and Captain Dye saying, "You've got that catch me, kill me, fuck me look in your eye. I'm getting aroused easy." And what does it feel like to suddenly think, "Oh, I've got him"? Do you know what I mean? And
I'll let the guys tackle that one, and then I'll come back in. But,
yeah.
Well, the evolution is different. Go ahead, Freddie.
No, just what Mike said. It's different. And how we don't say, okay, by day 2, they're going to have it. All the troops let you know. Sometimes it's extremely quick. They're locked on. They got their stuff going. And that also has to do with the leadership within. You have the actors or leadership. So they're working overtime with everything they've been taught. So they'll get it very quickly. And my whole thing is they don't once they're tired enough, as Captain Dye and Mike could say, once they're tired enough and they're just sick of hearing Freddie Joe screaming and Mike Stokey doing the magic over there and Captain Dye over there yelling at a wall doing his drill instructor impersonations. Once they've had enough of that and they say, "I just want them to get out of my face, stop yelling at me, I'm tired, I want to go to sleep," Then Captain Dye will switch that switch, or Mike Stokey or myself. Then we go into teach mode. They're teaching. They want to absorb every ounce of everything. And I always used to tell them, especially now, I tell everybody when I get in front of people, even my stunt performers when I'm doing stunts, I can be you, but you will never in your lifetime be me. So pay attention to about what I'm fixing to teach you. If you don't like it, you picked the wrong profession. Because your job is to lie. And there's one thing that you can say, Matthew, more than we can, is you can't lie to another military man that you were in the military if you were never in the military.
No.
So that's what we try to do, is help you with that lie. And it's you guys tell us when it's time to move to the next level. Not we don't say, oh, I've never seen on Captain Dye's case, oh, day 3, we're really going to start taking it easy on. You know, it's just, you could see Captain Dye kind of come in an airplane. Mike Stokey comes in with his little airplane for the landing. You know, it's like, okay, guys, let's back off a little bit. Let's start. Hey, look at Frank John Hughes. He's looking at me, and he can tell me what time it is on the wall over there. You know, they start throwing a little joke. Oh, wait, you know, Sergeant Farnsworth is he's a human. You know, and that's when that kind of moves into that level. That's my experience.
But it's a massive leap of faith. What if it doesn't work?
There's no such thing.
Good.
Look, I'll let the XO climb in here in a minute, but it is always in the back of my mind that we could have a nuclear disaster and it wouldn't work at all. But I'm confident now that I've got the right guys, I've got the right philosophy, I've got the right experience, both military and showbiz experience, to design it properly so that it won't fail. Right. Thank God to date it has not failed, and I think as Freddie Joe said, you feel it. I feel it as a commanding officer, and I know when my outfit's going haywire. I know when my outfit is drifting, and you make corrections right there. You use your staff and you use your guys and say, wait a minute, this isn't working, and on the fly you change it, you shift it. And that's worked enormously for us up until this point.
Right. Yeah.
You don't treat them all the same. You just don't. I know people love that line that you're supposed to, but you don't treat them all the same because they're not all the same.
No, they're human beings.
Treat them all fairly, and that's the key. I once had and sometimes you get the edgy guys in there. I was with training Cole Hauser once, and he came in. Colin Farrell was a gem. Cole Hauser just, he wasn't listening to nothing. And I had to sit him down, and he still wasn't listening to anything. So I walked away. We had a stand down, and I called him up. I said, I forget his name, Sergeant or Corporal such and such. Take a seat, just him and me alone. I said, tomorrow, here's what happens. There's an ambush site up here. You're going to lead this entire squad through the woods. It's going to be up to you to break that ambush, make sure it doesn't happen, and to either kill them or surround them. Come out of this attempt without a single man being hurt. And the light switch went on. The next day, he realized that it was up to him. And in his case, it was just giving him that responsibility. That's what he wanted. He didn't want somebody yelling at him and barking at him. But the minute he had some responsibility and responsible for the other guys, boy, he was solid. And he loved it. He was good at it.
But that was a result. That was a result of the XO being smart enough to read him and find his buttons. And that's exactly what you have to do. Yeah.
I'm going to move on. Can you just give me a little tidbit? I was fascinated to hear that you did a Wehrmacht boot camp before the Band of Brothers.
We did. Very few people know about that. Very few people know about it.
Blew my mind. What did that entail?
Yeah, let me tell you how that came about. Mike and I had been talking for years about the enemy in the movies that we'd worked on, some that we'd worked on and some that we'd just seen. And so many times they were cartoon characters. they were just little pop-up meat targets out there that guys fired at, and then the stunt turds would make their heads explode in a pig mist or something. And it was so easy. The enemy never had a vote. They never had a chance. And I said, our experience in combat is hardly that.
Right.
The guys we fought, both in Southeast Asia and the Middle East, were sharp, tough bastards. And they gave you a fight, and they were able to maneuver. They were not meat puppets out there that, set up for you to shoot. And I said, I think that's an element that's missing in some of the stuff we do. So I think we should push to develop a program where we get to train the bad guys, get to train the enemy. And it was a tough go, Matt. And the reason was producers and directors who got to sign the checks for this stuff, they don't think of them as important. That's just background.
Right.
Well, no, it's not in our way of thinking about it. And so we developed this program, and we said, look, from now on, we're going to try to the best of our extent, to the best of our ability, we're going to try to train the bad guys, train the enemy. And Band of Brothers was the first real opportunity we got to do that. So what we did is we while you guys were being prepped, Mike and I and the other cadre were working with, we recruited essentially guys that we thought could be good, solid Wehrmacht soldiers. And I think, what was there, about 50 of them, Mike? I can't remember. It was a good number of 30.
40,
yeah, 30 to 50 of them. And we put them in full German uniforms, full German weapons, MP-3840s, Kar 98Ks, MG-34 machine guns, and even a cannon. You remember that cannon that was on the in the yard, the 105 millimeter howitzer? Yeah, that was left over from the Germans, because we trained them to be an artillery outfit.
Wow.
And what we did is we went to work on studying, as we mentioned early on, we went to work on studying German tactics, their field tactics, their training, their organization. And then we developed, I think it was 7 days. We developed a 7-day training schedule there at Longmoor. And we built them into an enemy unit, and Jesus, they were good.
Really?
By the time you guys started contacting them, they were sharp. They gave you a fight, which I think really enhanced the performance all around.
Yeah, and so were you marching? Were you doing German army marching? Were you doing Wehrmacht marching songs or any of that business, or did they march different? Or?
Yes, they marched differently
with infantry there.
Right.
We most concentrated on the infantry aspect.
Right.
Well, they were all infantry. What he's talking about is, did we sing Die Stille Nacht and German marching songs? The answer is no, because we were focused on their tactics. We only had a few days.
Right.
And so what we wanted to do was, once we felt we had a unit at least formed, we were going to put them into the field and make them work with the weapons and that sort of thing. And that was our emphasis.
After band, the one thing it taught us was, after we realized concentrating on an enemy was paramount. After that, we started training the enemy at the same time, simultaneously with the Allied group. And whether it was Vietnamese, Japanese, Germans, you train them at the same time and you engage them to fight each other during the boot camp. And like I would take over the Japanese or Vietnamese when Dale was handling the American troops. Freddie would do the same for me if I was running a show. He would be in there if we were doing a second unit or second boot camp. He would be taking over the enemy force in ambushes and stuff. And it really, really paid off.
This was on the Pacific.
It was on the Pacific.
The Japanese on the Pacific.
And where it really paid off for a second was actually the Great Raid. They had no idea, the Japanese, we were in the jungle in Australia, they had no idea they were there. And the first time I took my guys out to get ambushed, for the first time, so they're like day 6, like whatever, here we go again. Farnsworth got us up at 1 a.m. and these Japanese troops it messed them up. They thought for sure that these were ghosts. They were ghosts that had attacked them. And that was when I seen it. I said, holy cow, because they were like, eyes were that big all day. The next day, they were really ghosts. You should hear him talk. Capt Dale say some stories because he just played them like ghosts.
You end up building 2 units, and of those Japanese, we ended up using them again in Pacific, where they became part of our cadre.
Wow. We actually have one of the Pacific cast on, actually. Scott, can we see you? I promise he's here.
He's probably on his cell phone walking around his house. Oh, there she is.
There you go.
Hey,
Hey, how you doing?
Look at that.
If we're talking about the Pacific boot camp, which fascinates me as well, I don't know anything about it. Perhaps Scott could take over here. What was were you on the Pacific boot camp?
Well, they had 2.
They had 2. Oh.
Yeah, a main one before they started filming. And then I wasn't, in it till episode 5, which would have been about a month or 2 after they started. So they had a mini boot camp. It was, I think, 4 days, and the other one was 8.
Yeah.
The other gentleman gave, razzed us for, you only had 4 days, But
there's always a pecking order, Scott.
Yeah, there is. Yes, you will always be the bottom of it, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
So carry on, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, I was certainly intimidated about it and excited. And, the morning of, you get on the bus and Freddie Joe is just giving his best drill instructor. I had seen him actually the day before. I didn't know who he was, but I was walking from town back to the resort, and I see this guy jogging down the road, and he's coming right at me. I thought, geez, that guy looks like he could be one of the actors. And so I'm looking at him, and he jogs by, and he just looks at me and gives me this smirk. And I thought, who the hell is it? I don't know who this guy is. Now, he would have known who I was, but I didn't know who he was. Cut to getting there to base camp, get off the bus, and I was the only officer in that boot camp.
Oh dear.
Rami Malek was there, John Bernthal, Martin McCann, and Brendan Fletcher, and then a bunch of background. And I didn't want to be separated. I thought, I hope they keep me with the rest of the guys. It wasn't like I didn't want special treatment, basically, kind of thing. Anyways, LT gives his talk to us, and then he says, Haldane, you're with me, everyone else over there. Oh, okay, great. So he starts talking to me about what's going on, and he says, you're going to be with us in the command post. I'm like, great, okay. And all of a sudden I see Gunny Farnsworth and Gunny Whitfield walking towards me, and they got the campaign hat just perfectly on the brow. And Freddie Joe was eyeballing me like he was looking right through me. And he got about 3-4 feet away, and he's still looking at me, and he goes, going back to your bitch tent, bitch.
Freddie, you're fired.
He spat tobacco right at my feet, and I nearly shot
I had to get
myself.
those boots dirty.
Yeah, and I was just, oh God, here we go. But I had the great opportunity to shadow Mike the entire time, and that made a world of difference in terms of my performance.
Did his teaching style affect your performance? Do you think I'm stealing that?
Yeah, absolutely, because Haldane led from the front and led by example, and he wasn't a screamer. He wasn't. He was, when he had to be hard, he was hard, but he was definitely fair. And Mike didn't say, "Oh, where are you from?" and get all colloquial with me or anything like that. But his leadership style, I emulated within my portrayal, because he didn't speak a lot, but when he did, it was very firm. It was very direct. If he had to raise his voice, he certainly would. And walking around one night with them, we were going to be attacked, by Freddie Joe and Sergeant Bunch, and I forget who else. So it's nighttime. We're walking around inside the perimeter, and I knew about his experience in Vietnam. He didn't talk about it, but all of a sudden I said to him, when you're in Vietnam, did you ever look up in the sky and try and get your bearings from the Southern Cross? And Mike he pauses and he goes, I never looked up long enough to figure it out. Yeah, of course.
Brilliant.
Why the hell would you? And then, so I saw Freddie Joe and Bunch, come into camp like stealth. Where the fuck did these guys come from out of the sugarcane?
They kept doing that to us as well. You'd be like, and then behind you right there, just making it like an ass the whole time.
Yeah. And so walking the inside the perimeter, and you looked out, it was pitch black, and there were, two guys in a foxhole, and I guess they heard us walking, and the password, one guy says, you hear something, Clark, the other guy says, Gable. So this kid, all of a sudden you hear, Clark? And Mike goes, because he wanted to know if the kid was pointing his rifle inside the perimeter. So I didn't say anything, and then the kid goes, Clark? Didn't say anything again. And then all of a sudden, bam, the muzzle flat, like he shot right at us. If it was real, bullets, we'd have been dead. And I crapped myself again there, but Mike certainly gave them a piece of his mind.
I just said, Kent.
Yeah, exactly. Just what I was thinking too. You got to put yourself into the time.
Yeah.
And then
sorry, I just wanted to speak to the cadre about, so how long after Band of Brothers did you then start the Pacific boot camp?
Too long. We were waiting and waiting and waiting. We couldn't wait to get at it. It was Marine Corps, but we did it in 2007 and 8.
Right. And I mean, obviously this is your game, Marine Corps stuff, isn't it? So, but what had you learned from working, say, Private Ryan, Band of Brothers, boot camp stuff that you just thought, we got to scrap that, doesn't bloody work? Was there anything, and what do you think that's the one thing we have to do?
Well, look, our methodology changes with everything we do. We've done ancient Greece with Alexander, and we've done 400 years in the future with Starship Troopers.
Right.
So nothing is exactly similar, with a couple of caveats. We have always believed, as Warriors Incorporated, we've always believed that the spirit of the warrior never changes. The methodology changes, the weapons changes, the philosophy changes, the enemy changes, the terrain changes, the weather changes, but the spirit of the warrior is always the same. And we teach to that. That's the central thing we want all you guys, Scott, you, Tab, those are the things that we need you to understand. The rest of it, we've got to teach you because you need it. You'll need it for your performance. You'll need to understand, how to wear your uniform, how to handle your weapon, how to move, and so on and so forth. And we give you those things. But the intangible that we desperately need to give you, and that I think we've done so well, especially in instances where we had a lot of time, like Band of Brothers and like the Pacific, and what we need to give you is that intangible, that relationship, that understanding of the spirit of the warrior, what happens in your brain, what happens in your heart, what happens in your guts. And if we can get you there through whatever method, and if we have to modify that method, we absolutely will, as long as it works to get you where we need you in terms of understanding being a warrior.
So following on from that, and you can tell me to go fuck myself here if you don't want to.
Go fuck yourself.
Thank you.
Fuck yourself.
I miss you guys.
Get back in
so
your bitch tent, bitch.
Bitch.
I miss you guys. For you, as former Marines, when you do this work, when you immerse yourself in whatever it is, the project you're doing now, the Pacific Band of Brothers, is there an element of it that is cathartic for you? Are you able to work through stuff that you have inside in this controlled environment, or is it just teaching weenies to, you know, do what they're told? Or is there a part of you that's just like, you know, if I could work this into here, it releases something? Is there an element?
Yes, yeah, there is. Or at least there is for me.
Right.
It was cathartic. You know, in the case of Mike and I, we did long tours in Southeast Asia, way too long.
Yeah.
And you carry a lot of baggage from that stuff. But and I think when he first started, Mike was reluctant to think of a catharsis in this, but I had already experienced it. I knew it was there. And I think where Mike discovered it one night was that we were up in the mountains of the Philippines doing Born on the 4th of July. And we had crews up there and a whole bunch of other guys. And we played a piece of music for them, written by some Vietnam veterans. And it was a song about survivor guilt. It was about, it should have been me instead of the guy who got it, in the words of the song. And it had both of us in tears. And I think that was Mike can lie about it all he wants to. I know that was a catharsis moment for him, and it certainly was for me. So I think the answer for all of us that have been in combat is that doing this sort of thing, there will be moments, at least a moment, but usually several moments, that will ring the bell with us. That'll be us representing something we have seen that had an enormous emotional impact on us.
Right.
And that is cathartic, yes.
Wow. There's just one scene and you just think, like, that was me. And you take the actor to one side and say, listen, son, do it this way, or think about it this way. And
I have done that, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating.
On a
Please.
A tactical move we had in the jungle, one of those nights on the boot camp, they turned the camp lights off. We went up into the hills, and we were being attacked by Freddie and Bunch. And I was right by the LT, and as soon as it lit up, when we got the machine gun blasts at us and everything like that, he called for me, said Haldane, but he didn't say anything after that. And I just felt like, man, what must this guy be thinking right now? And he sort of flashback from Vietnam or something, that just really. No,
he was thinking, how'd they cast a Canadian?
The thing is, for God's sake.
I can't say this if they weren't as hard on you as they were, and also fair. I mean, I know there were some guys that had problems with it, but when I got on set, I never really thought about, oh, how am I acting? How's my acting? I thought, how am I as a Marine? It put a great ease in terms of performance, because you didn't really think about it. You just, how am I doing this? And took a ton of pressure off. And if they weren't like that, you wouldn't respect them.
Yeah,
and they respect
exactly right.
And that's the whole point. Just what you said, Scott. That's the entire point of why we do it. It's not the war stories. It's not where we've been. It's not even our relationship between the cadre. It's just that.
Yeah.
That's what
second nature. The rest is up to you.
That's what I felt I had to measure up to, not to anyone else's acting, or not, someone was directing. The skipper, one time up 7, we're going up into the hills, and I was late because they had to put gray. Haldane went completely gray within a month, so they're putting gray in my hair. Anyway, he, did my job, for the rehearsal. And when I showed up, he said, well, this is what you do. You're leading the company up in the hills, and weapons move here, and this and that. And I just wasn't playing Haldane that way. So when we went to shoot, I said to Sergeant Bunch, who was playing my first sergeant, I said, when they say action, you muster the troops, you get weapons to move and all that. And I just walked and said nothing, just looking at my map. And afterwards I thought, oh, the skipper's gonna, give me a blast. And we'd finished shooting that sequence, and he came up to me and he said, every leader has his own way of leading, and I respect that. And man, that just made me feel so good,
there's that moment when they call cut, the first person you look at is the cadre, isn't it? You just like,
oh,
was that any good?
yeah.
So there's a brilliant documentary on the making of Platoon, just to circle back. We'll do like 5-10 minutes more if you don't mind, in which they talk about a moment with you, Dale, where I think did the NVA come through the jungle and you grab a weapon? Is that true? Did that happen?
Yeah, it is. I'll tell you that.
We were before I could I just interrupt you? We actually have
Sure.
the guy that made the documentary on. Paul, can we see you?
Yes, we'll see about there. I am
The director of the documentary.
Are you
Here to see you.
Hey, Paul.
Dye, how are you, my friend?
Good. How are you?
Better now. It is always good. You haven't aged a day, by the way.
He never does.
Yeah, I have, but thank you for saying that, Doc. I appreciate it. But the story, I should let Paul relate this, because he was good in that documentary at sucking these stories out of all of us, and the reason for that was because he was there and went through it all. But the story is quite simply this: we had worked 14, 15 hours. I was dead on my feet, and it was at night, and we were in the jungles in the Philippines. And I always carried an M16 loaded with blanks in it, because Stone frequently would get me to jump in the middle of a fight and fire it up, just to motivate the action. That's Stone's style. And we were doing this night ambush sequence, and I had sat down next to the camera on an apple box, waiting for Stone to throw me in or do whatever he was going to do. And I leaned my head on the muzzle of the 16 and put my chin on it and went to sleep. Just sitting there. And the fog rolled in, and the sequence, if you've seen it, is the two NVA merge out of the fog and make a hand signal and move into the ambush that Charlie Sheen and Doc and all the other guys were going to pull on them. Well, I didn't wake up until the NVA sequence, and it was just dead silence, dead quiet. Cameras were running, but I had no realization of where I was or anything else. And I saw those two coming at me, and I shouldered the weapon and hit the safety, and I was going to nail them. And Stone reached over and got a hold of me. And I quickly looked around and said, oh God, we're filming. This isn't a real ambush. But it was mighty close. I was about to trigger it off.
Wow.
I don't know. Interesting to think what would have happened, Paul, if I've actually done that.
No, and Stone had kept it in the movie.
Yeah, he loved it. Yeah, probably.
Johnny Dad was near you, and he was off camera, and he actually was just transfixed by having you. Everybody else comes out of a groggy thing, all over the place. He said, you came up and your eyes were big as sauce, and you leveled your 16, and then your Stone was able to, bring it not out of the ordinary on that set. No,
it happened. Yeah.
The Village was another incredible sequence of, you guys were talking a little earlier about the catharsis of these vets and going back at least mentally and spiritually to, their hell. And you could see both Dye and Oliver just in another place. And I think Scott spoke of just how, I don't know if it's pressure, but just how much every one of on every film, wanted, had to, needed to. We didn't give a crap about, oh gosh, that's really good acting. Did I have my finger on the trigger? You know, did I look good? Not good to the camera. You look to Dye, you look to the, you know, the ringers, and it's like, yeah. You never look to Oliver. Oliver will let you know if it works cinematically.
Count on it.
If he's put film in the camera.
Right. There's that.
But you know, that whole thing, guys, was a lesson to me, and I think in building the methodology that we use, and in improving it and modifying it and being flexible enough to change it for whatever theater, whatever war we're in, whatever time period we're in historically, it was Platoon that kind of showed me that methodology would work with actors, and B, that if you're smart enough to keep an eye on them, and I mean an eagle eye on them, you can guide them as they go. Right. And you can do these little whisper in their ear, just touch them, you know, on the shoulder and shake your head, and they get it right away. Okay, oh, I did something wrong. I'll fix it right away. And that makes it so much easier. I mean, there's no need for us at this point, philosophically, to be raving lunatics. I mean, it just doesn't. There's no use in it. It doesn't work.
No, there's definitely method in the madness.
In all of these films, we wanted to be there. One reporter asked me, like, "Were you brainwashed?" I'm like,
yes.
I won. You know, the New York Yankees just, you know, put me out on the field. Brainwashed. We would do anything. Never asked twice. You know, we may have inwardly said to ourselves, I hope I can do it, rappelling down a 60-foot wall or whatever. I do remember, though, not everybody is 110% in. And I remember you taking they will remain nameless, but two different guys behind a truck. Only took about 15 seconds. But when you both walked back each time, that actor was a little more focused. And now he was with the rest of us.
Yeah, it was called Capt Dale's
had to several times, and he takes him behind that truck and he gives him a nice kiss.
Yeah, that's correct.
Lucky.
I'll give you $50 if you listen to me.
Yeah, that's it. That's how I do it. You bet. Yeah, it's called Capt Dye's group tightener.
Let's get at it. Discipline is
but there are ways. I mean, look at. I mean, I've got actors here and close friends now from 3 projects.
Yeah.
And all you guys get it.
Yeah.
You get the differences, you get the value, you get the importance. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, and with you 3, I know I'm not, you've taken some of that with you in everything you've done since.
Oh, definitely.
Because I can tell it. I just know from you.
2 things. One, Captain Dye, you told me to do that with my hand if I wanted something from somebody and look them right in the eye. I said, this is what's going to happen. I still do that. And Freddie Joe Farnsworth just said, no matter what anybody says to you, just say, yes, sir. So take all the power away. And I still do that as well. I still do that as well.
I went to R.V. Bergen's funeral 2 years ago. And the love they had for the show, the respect they had for me, which I felt I didn't deserve. They were so pleased and honored that I would show up, and it was just such a wonderful experience. But as his casket was being taken out of the church, RV had wanted the theme from the Pacific to be played, and it was just, I mean, you're just dropping tears the whole time.
Yeah, yeah, I get it. And look what Paul Sanchez did. I mean, he actually, and God knows what that poor man went through to finding us from Platoon like herding cats, and he worked on it for years and got everybody in place and made this beautiful documentary, which is a really insightful, a really nice piece. But why would he have done that if that experience didn't mean a lot to him, you know? And so I just have to think, you know, now that the XO and I are getting agey as shit. I'm older than dirt, and he's just barely younger than a rock. But we're getting to the point where little things like that we were able to give you guys. Those are the things that, you know, will take us to our graves, like the theme from the Pacific took RV.
I have a question, Captain, for you on that very subject.
Yeah.
That is, what will your legacy be? Will it be you just drop the mic and say, all right, guys, just someone else, or are you bleeding in new guys? And is it going to continue? Because this is not going to stop. I mean, people are not going to be fascinated by these, not fascinated by these stories, are they? Are you blooding in new guys, or are you just,
yeah,
that was me,
yeah,
follow that?
Well, there is, yes, we are. We're training guys, and we're always on the lookout. The XO in particular is always on the lookout for people that we can bring in who would get it and who we can rely on. We've tried it before, and sometimes we've had some successes like Freddie Joe, and sometimes we've had some clinkers, guys who have sort of betrayed us and betrayed our trust and that sort of thing. And that's disappointing. That's sad. But we know the importance of what we've done. And if you ask me what the legacy is, Tab, you're the legacy. Scott, you're the legacy. Paul, you're the legacy. You know, when they plant my dumb ass, I'll know that out there, you guys are still appreciate the work. We'll still carry it in your hearts and in your minds, and we'll carry it on. And there's hundreds more that are just like you that we've trained. And, you know, if there was a guy that interviewed me once that said, what do you know what they should put on your headstone?
All the whiskey?
Yeah, right. Captain Dale Dye changed the way Hollywood made war movies. And if that's the epitaph, good enough for me and good enough for the Warriors guys, I think.
Wow. Okay. Well, I think on that brilliant note, I think we'll call it an afternoon, evening. I just wanted to say, Paul Sanchez, who directed the Platoon documentary, you have been our inspiration for doing this from the outset. And this is going out on our event, and it is now available in the UK. Is that, Paul? Do you want to give us a little plug here?
Yes, thank you. The film's called Brothers in Arms, The Making of Platoon, and it's in the UK, also iTunes. It's through Kaleidoscope, but every one of you guys on all the other films, I know you feel every bit as tight with your brothers as I do, not just did. So you'll find your characters in our film, regardless if we made it about Platoon. It's about all of us.
Yeah, it's fucking brilliant. Honestly, I've seen it. Leighton made me see it, and I was like, oh,
yeah, brilliant film.
Oh, it's really good. It's really good. And there are some unbelievable coups for the actors he gets, and I won't give it away. But it's just bonkers. It's like, how the hell did he get that guy? So I just wanted to say thank you so much, everybody. It's a Sunday and a bank holiday. You guys are super busy. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's
great seeing you again.
It's great. Honestly, great to see you again, guys. You are all looking wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on.
I just wanted to say
Thanks.
thank you so much, Matt and Leighton. It was a real pleasure and an honor to be on this platform, and to see you, Paul, as well. I look forward to the documentary. None of these shows would be anything close to what they are without these gentlemen. They're very humble about their work, but the respect they have for the uniform, for their experience, and for the people we portrayed, absolutely made the difference. And I really hope the public, understands that about these shows. So, gentlemen, thank you so much.
Johnny
Thank you, Scott.
Still calls him Dye. Still calls him Dye. Johnny still calls him Dye. He's got his eyes go massive in the Platoon documentary. He talks about.
You still call me Skipper. And, I mean, I don't know what my real name is, and I don't care. You know, as long as I got you guys, that's great. It's so good to see you. I mean, I love all of you, and we'll do this again one of these days.